The Western press is beginning to wake up to the fact that this counteroffensive and generally speaking, the war in Ukraine is not going well. And all I have to say to them is that the blood is on their hands. They're talking about all this madness that is ensuing. We're going to cover this story right now. It's a shocking article from the New York Times about how in Ukraine they're digging up old graves to make room for newly fallen soldiers. And this is shocking stuff. You know, I covered a story the other day about how a Ukrainian influencer posted on their Instagram that the morgue where their grandmother was being held at, who her grandmother just passed away, the morgue literally said, "Come get your grandmother's corpse and figure out something to do with it because we simply cannot hold it here because of the overwhelming number of bodies that are coming back from the front." And the influencer was like, "Well, what do you want me to do with this?" Okay, so the cemetery's overflowing, that there's nowhere to bury her. The morgue's overflowing. They won't keep her body there. So this Ukrainian influencer said, "I literally have to keep my grandmother's corpse in my apartment, and her body is, doing what bodies do when they perish, and there's no refrigerated area to keep these bodies anymore." So while all these people are speaking about the insanity of what's going on right now, I do have to agree, this is insane. But the insanity and the blood that is being shed is on your hands. All of you that were cheerleading Slava Ukraini and saying we need to do a strong counteroffensive for months and months and months and saying we can't have a peace proposal, we can't have a peace treaty, we have to continue fighting until the last Ukrainian. Yeah, the blood is on your hands. Because while you're saying that, all these Ukrainian soldiers that are being rounded up by the thousand on the streets of Odessa and in Kharkiv and Lviv, all across Ukraine, they're in trenches right now, not knowing if they're going to make it another 24 hours, understanding full and well that they are not prepared for the task of defeating the Russian army and taking back Ukraine's 1991 borders. And they're literally wondering if they're going to be next, while you're over here gloating about how strong Ukraine is and how this must continue and stuff. Yeah, the blood is on your hands. Okay, so let's just see what they're talking about, because this is from the paper of record, the New York Times. Digging up old graves to make room for newly fallen soldiers. For close to 15 months, the bodies of fallen soldiers have steadily filled up a hillside military cemetery in the western Ukrainian city of Lviv. Now, the old unmarked graves of those killed in the past wars are being exhumed to make way for the seemingly endless stream of dead since Russia's invasion of Ukraine. So they're literally saying that they're digging up World War II graves to make room for the new bodies that need to find a home. On Monday afternoon, a half a dozen grave diggers took a break in the shade, waiting for the latest coffin to inter at the cemetery, called Lichikiv. Smoking cigarettes and shielding themselves from the sun, they lamented the devastation that Russia had wrought. Well, really, it's you guys that are the ones who are pursuing the endless warfare. It's you guys who are doing this, okay? And they said that they were bracing for more deaths as the fighting grew more intense during Ukraine's counteroffensive. So at some point or another, they should probably begin to ask themselves, like, what if we just settled a peace deal? Fierce battles are playing out on the front line in the country's east and south, with Ukraine reporting on Monday that it had recaptured 8 settlements over 2 weeks of offensive actions. I've been following the warfare day and night, and I have yet to identify what those 8 settlements are, but I'd imagine they're probably referring to some of the farm towns with less than 50 homes that have like 1 or 2 roads in the Vermevsky Ledge region, which is a big nothing burger. But most of these are just contested back and forth and back and forth and back and forth, and it's a gray zone. Okay, so let's see if they talk about it. Among the settlements reclaimed, they said, was the village of Piatikatki. Okay, so they're citing Piatikatki as a city that has been retaken by the Ukrainians. Now, for those of you who don't know, Piatikatki, and I hope I'm pronouncing it right, I hope my limited Russian capabilities are helping me pronounce that city, that I can't even call it a city, that small village correctly, because Scott from Calibrated actually showed a picture of Piatikatki in his most recent video that he uploaded. You should all go follow him. But when you hear about this in the New York Times and you're like, oh, wow, they're taking a whole settlement. Ukraine took a whole settlement. That must be a huge feat for them to have accomplished. Well, you should take a look at what the settlement actually entails, because it's not what they're making it out to be, okay? So first of all, let me show you this. This is Piatikatki right here. This is the massive stretch of land that they're allegedly, reconquering in their counteroffensive. It is very, very tiny, as you can see. I mean, this is, like I said, it's a nothing burger. But I believe Scott also even attached an actual photo of Piatikatki in here. Let me see if I can scroll through and find it. Yes, this is it right here. So this is the massive settlement of Piatikatki that they are talking about. Kayak? I don't know. This is it. It's a small farming village with like maybe 20 homes. Maybe. It's got some open fields. It looks like it has some sort of a agricultural section in the northeast right here of the village, and some trees over here, some open fields, some soil. And then, at the bottom, it's got like maybe 20 homes. It's got 1-2 roads that run through it. So, they're talking about, Ukraine has sacrificed all these men, thousands of men, but they did capture these settlements. Well, the settlements, it's like 3 farms with about 20 homes, maybe 20 homes, huts, if that, 2 roads. And to be honest, for the past 24 hours, Piatikatki, since the New York Times posted this, has changed. It's changed ownership 3 different times. It's gone Ukrainian, Russian, Ukrainian, Russian, Ukrainian, Russian, Ukrainian, back to the gray zone. Now it's an open war. I mean, no one holds any significant control over Piatikatki. And to be honest, it doesn't matter. If we weren't in the information dense age that we are living in, where every 3 meters that is fought for gets reported on Twitter, you wouldn't even know that these cities are being, transferred by the dueling belligerents. You wouldn't even know. It's only because we live in this like extremely saturated environment that we even know this is happening. Okay, 70 years ago, no one would have known that this is even happening. Okay, but the New York Times claims this is a big deal, and it's actually good that they're winning this. Okay, even though they're sacrificing all these men. While the recapture of Piatikatki in the Zaporozhye region is evidence that Ukraine's forces continue to advance, it is not a significant military breakthrough. Okay, fair. Like other villages recaptured, this one is small. Piatikatki translates to 5 houses, and claiming them has come at the cost of Ukrainian lives and advanced Western equipment. Okay, so I was wrong. 5 houses, and the New York Times is actually making a good point here. The situation in the east is difficult now, Miss Maliar wrote. The enemy has raised its forces and is conducting an active offensive in the Liman and Kupiansk directions, which we're going to be talking about those later, trying to seize the initiative from us. But she added, our troops act courageously in the face of the enemy's superiority in forces and means, and do not allow the enemy to advance. So they are advancing in Liman and Kupiansk, but they're also not advancing. Make it make sense. And a British Defense Intelligence report said on Sunday that both armies were suffering significant casualties from the current fight. I mean, that's a 50% true statement. And military experts have said that months of artillery duels and trench warfare most likely lie ahead. Like the Ukrainians, the Russians have been secretive about the toll from the war. Not really. I mean, Putin just came out and announced the tolls of the war. He announced that Russia in the first 10, 12 days of the counteroffensive lost 54 tanks. I don't think that's any, hiding of the truth. I think he's coming out and admitting it, actually. Like the Ukrainians, the Russians have been, blah, 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 blah. So Sergey Shoigu said nearly 6,000 Russians had been killed since September. Experts considered that number low at the time. I actually don't think I think that's actually probably pretty, well, no, I don't think that's that low, because you're talking about Russians. If you take into account Wagner fighters, Chechen fighters, it's probably going to be high. It definitely is going to be higher. But he's just talking about direct Russian Federation troops, I'd imagine. Okay. Leaked Pentagon documents published in April estimate that Ukraine has suffered 124 to 131,000 casualties, with up to 17,000 500 killed in action. That number is very, very low. Okay. But anyways, this is just a crazy, crazy story. So they're talking about it. Okay, so look at this. So at the funeral service of 2 soldiers in a Greek Catholic church in central Lviv, incense filled the air. The priest said that the priest he had assumed the 2 were father and son because of their name and ages. Their families were joined by their pain, he said. After the church ceremony, the coffins were loaded into vans and driven to the central square where a single trumpeter played. Then the cortege made its way to the graveyard. Along the route, residents paused to pay their respects. A young girl stood next to her father, a small brown shopping bag in her hand, staring straight ahead as the coffins passed by. Some bystanders fell to their knees. At the cemetery, Olena Deduk, Boden Deduk's wife, fainted, overwhelmed by the grief and afternoon sun. Her sister steadied her, wrapping her arm around her back. Steps away, Oleg Deduk's family arranged yellow and blue flowers, the colors of the Ukrainian flag, on his grave. Okay, I mean, this is, you're talking about thousands upon thousands upon thousands of men. They could write an entire library's worth of stories like this, and it still wouldn't be enough to cover all of the grief that those that are in pain and have lost family members right now are experiencing, okay? It is so hard to imagine the level of bloodshed, loss of life, death, everything that we're witnessing right now. But it is all happening at the hands of those who are continuing to escalate and promote the continued escalation of this war. So when the New York Times or CNN or the Telegraph or the BBC or whoever comes out and says stuff like this about how insane it is that, these young Ukrainian men that were just conscripts are sent to the front and they get killed, and now we have so many dead people that the morgues are filling up, the cemeteries are filling up. Yeah, I agree. This is extremely sad. I don't want this. I don't think any of you watching this want that. Okay, we simply want peace. That's all we want. And Putin actually wants peace. I think he proved that last week when he was speaking before the African delegation that was led by South Africa, when he showed that he actually made good on the promises of his 2022 peace treaty that was negotiated in Istanbul with the Ukrainian negotiating delegation. Of course, Ukraine didn't hold up their side of the bargain, and one of the chief negotiators from Ukraine was assassinated on the streets of Kiev not too long after this negotiation fell through. So there you have it. Very, very difficult times, obviously, for both sides, but especially for Ukraine. Sadly, it doesn't seem as